It's a wonderful evening and I have the most delightful company with me. It's 5 p.m. We are at Badri High School and I have the opportunity to enjoy a tea-to-tea with an inspiring personality. They say style is a combination of personality and attitude. And if that's true, this person that I'm going to interview now has an unmatched style with an attitude that never says no to anything and this determination to always overcome challenges and reach for the stars. It is my privilege and honor to introduce my colleague and my friend Zainab Mohammed. How are you, Zainab?
I am awesome, Bain. I am so overwhelmed at this introduction that you have given. I feel like I'm meeting somebody else.
No, every word is absolutely true.
Thank
Ms.
you so
Zainab
much.
Mohammed is not just an inspiring teacher, a life-changing trainer, but also the founder of Skillet and now is the proud author of her wonderfully inspiring book, Imprisoned in Freedom. So Zainab, tell me, what drove you to write this book?
Bain, to be very honest, I will say that it's you who drove me to write this book. You remember that day when we met for the first time, you came to Badri High School as our head of section, and that day when I saved your number in my phone, and in the night I was just going through statuses, and I saw your blog as a status posted on your status. And when I opened it, I read it. I loved each and every word which you had written. Then I came to you the other day and you told me about how a blog is being made and how it serves the purpose of capturing your, heartfelt memories and all of that. So I started doing that. And when I did that, I came to know that I have this unfound love of writing somewhere inside me. And day by day, when I literally what to say. I read each and every blog that was written on Z Murmur, which is Mariam Bain's blog's address. I read each one of it. And then in the beginning, I tried to sort of copy your style, which I couldn't because you have an unmatchable style. And then by and by, I never knew that this practice, helped me improve in my writing. And this book that you see in your hand, Bain, is something that I would say it's a collection of different feelings that I have gone through when I saw a few incidents in my life which changed me as a person. I'm a very sensitive human being. People who know me might not agree with this statement because I look really tough on the outside, but I'm a person who would watch you know, tragic news and start crying. I'm one of those people. So when I go through or when I pass through a story as an observant person, I feel that I can put my foot into the shoe of each and every character and empathize with each and every person that was there in that particular event. I believe that uh, you know drove me to pen down Imprisoned in Freedom. All these are tales. I would say most of them are real. Some of them are inspired from reality. And I feel that as a humanist, as a person who loves human beings, I feel that it's my duty and responsibility to pen each and everything that I have seen in my life. Whatever I could, I did it, and it's in your hands at the moment.
That is something that is so profoundly true. When I read this collection of short stories, one thing that stood out was, of course, it's clearly inspired from reality. Some events we can relate to. The characters are so believable. And the best thing about this collection is that you pay tribute to the unsung heroes that are around us. You know, ordinary people who have extraordinary traits and values like hope and resilience and compassion. How important do you think this is, teaching these values to our youth? I ask you this as a teacher.
When I believe that values are each and everything. Right from the time when human came to know that the earth revolves around the sun, it takes its rotation, to the time when human was actually able to calculate how many rotations or revolutions it takes in a year. I feel from each and everything that makes up this particular planet, values are the core thing. And if we are able to teach values which we can only learn through life using lessons that we deliver in the classroom. I feel we do a job which is done by saints and sages. This particular world in which we live in, we saw during the pandemic that we were exposed to technological revolution so much so that many of us who had never opened a computer on their own without taking a help from a child or a sibling or a younger sibling were exposed to Zoom and Google Docs and things like this. The world is like this, technologically cruel and brutal at times. So, in a world where everything is measured in numbers, in currency, in figures, in material, having values like hope, optimism, resilience, grit, I think that makes you stand out. And the purpose of education, I remember when I was in university, one of my teachers told us this definition of education. He asked all of us, do you know how do you define education? And all of us were blank because however educated we might be, but we never knew as simple a thing as the definition of education. He said that education is a change in behavior. So, for example, if you are passing from a path and you see that there's a bog over there, the next day you immediately change your path. You naturally do it. That's what education is. It teaches you to change your behavior. So, in times where we already know that corruption is not the right thing to do, or bribery is wrong, or telling a lie is sin, we tend to do it because we are bounded by so many obligations, so many we have to take so many pretensions in the take of circumstances. But I believe if values are planted as seeds, we tend to become a better human being every single day. Whether we are doctors, engineers, teachers, whatever we are. But if we are not a good human being, then being anything does not matter.
The fact that you're a teacher, a facilitator, someone who interacts with the youth is something that is clearly evident in this book. Maybe I feel that because I myself am a teacher. But I'd like to particularly talk about the first story in this collection, which is Imprisoned in Freedom, where you talk about the fact that the freedom and independence that we enjoy today is at a price that our ancestors have had to pay. So, does the fact that you've been teaching social studies and Pakistan studies for the past 2 years have anything to do with this story?
Yes, Ben, you are so right. When we are teachers all the time, and this has a very big impact, a very huge impact on our lives. And yes, Ben, of course. Thank you for the opportunity to have subjects like this. That my own meaning of freedom and independence have become much, much, much clearer. Whenever when I was a student and our teacher Ms. Zakia used to teach us Pakistan studies, I always had a very different kind of affiliation for the subject. And because of this, I had a very different kind of affiliation with Ms. Zakia. I always used to go into some another zone when she told us stories about partition, when she used to tell us how our ancestors, that train carriage story when, people were coming to Pakistan, when people were going to India, so many were brutally massacred and raped and killed and looted. All of that had a very, different kind of a place in my heart, and I always wanted to know more about it. So I remember one day we were coming back from, some place, and it was the 13th of August, and as if the whole city was on the streets. Every single youngster had painted their faces green. There were trumpets, and people were blowing horns and this and that. But what I couldn't see was respect, integrity. What I couldn't see was reverence for the country, for the flag. I was so disappointed. When I came home, I was half an hour or 1 hour late. And when I lied down to sleep, I was constantly overthinking the fact that if this is what a country like Pakistan, which has the largest, number of young people in the whole world, is doing to itself, then how are we supposed to, what condition are we supposed to give it, to our children and to our grandchildren? This fact hurted me so much pain, I cannot tell you. And this person, Karimu Baba, who's the protagonist, or shall I say, who's the main lead of the whole story, and he's narrating a story in a story. I have had the privilege of meeting this person. The name is, of course, not this. When I used to live back in Sefinagar, I met this person, and he narrated a tale very similar to this, but much, much, much more graphic. I couldn't use all of that here. And that cleared my meaning, my idea, my concept of freedom and slavery. Because the true meaning of freedom can only be perceived by somebody who has once been imprisoned. People who are born free are never able to value freedom the way it should be. So yes, it has a lot to do with the fact that I teach Pakistan studies and social studies, and I would say that this meaning of independence that and freedom that I have discovered throughout my experiences, I believe it helps me in delivering the right kind of content, the right kind of values. I try my best to the children of today that will be the future of tomorrow.
That you do. That you certainly do. Now I'll come to a very tough question.
Okay.
It's like choosing a favorite among your children.
Okay.
But out of all these 10 stories, is there a particular favorite?
Okay, this is a tough one, but again, I would say Imprisoned in Freedom is my favorite story because I believe that every story that is written in this book, there are 10, each and every story has something or the other to do with freedom and imprisonment. So, even when we are free, we are imprisoned. And even when we are imprisoned, it's the mindset that sets you free. So, there are people whom we meet in life who teach us completely different meanings of life itself. And when we go through that process, I would say that is metamorphosis for me because I am somebody, I'm a very weird sort of a person for normal people because when I walk, I'm not walking, I like stare at people, I watch things, I hear the chirping of birds. I am completely absorbed in my present whenever I'm just walking or strolling by. You might say that, look, Zainab is lost, but Zainab is not lost. Zainab is completely there and she's observing each and every detail. And I feel that helps me to pull out a story from each and every phase that I can see, from each and every move that people are making, from each and every dialogue that is being conveyed from one soul to another. That sort of helped me to kind of predict what is going at the back. And I feel as humans, this is our innate nature. So I'll say Imprisoned in Freedom is my favorite story because I think each and every story comes under the shadow of freedom and imprisonment in one way or the other.
Absolutely. I so agree. And I feel you have this exuberant passion for love, for life, and for learning. This love for living, which happens only when you experience or you feel everything so closely. I remember once a great writer in one of her interviews had said that writing is not just about using the right words or using big words.
Exactly.
It's about being able to feel, and like you said in the beginning, to be able to empathize and then create a picture for others so that empathy can become, something that's an inherent part of our youth.
I remember the time when I met Karimu Baba, I heard his story, and when I went home, this story haunted me for days and days. I did not write it, I wrote the story at least 1.5 years later. When I sat down and I decided that no, it's my duty to give what's inside right, outside. And when I sat down, I wrote the story. I read it twice, thrice, and I felt um, chilled to the bone when I thought of passing the story to my son, and when he reads it, and if he's not able to feel what I felt when I was writing it, I think I have not done anything. If that is the case, I so want the young generation, the youth of today, to not just read Imprisoned in Freedom, but any literature and learn from it and use it in their life because that is the whole point of being educated. Education is not the name of putting medals and certificates, on your status and saying that this is it. It is much more, it has much more to do with how you take your decisions, how you choose in life, how you decide which path to take, how you decide how to help somebody, because all these values come, I think, at the foremost level of application. And when you don't do that, then whatever you do is all down the drain.
Absolutely. You are a perfect synthesis, and your endeavor is a perfect synthesis of a teacher and a learner trying to convey everything that she has learned in the form of a book. And a book is the most immortal way that you can pass on something down generations.
Exactly.
Um, Why did you choose the genre of short stories? It is my personal favorite, but I would love to know from a fellow writer, why did you choose this particular?
Short stories, as a reader, if you ask me this question, I really love reading short stories. One good thing about short stories is that it ends, really quick. And in whatever state you are able to do justice to it because it does not take, it does not consume a lot of time. Also, a lot of short stories we see that it has an open-ended quality to it. So whoever the reader can perceive it there, especially afsanas in Urdu. I'm a big fan of people might not agree with what I say, but I'm a big fan of Ismat Chugtai and Minto, just because of the fact that the stories that they wrote were open-ended. There was no end to it. If we pick up any of the afsanas that Ismat Chugtai has written, we read it. When coming to the end, you are left open as a human to make your choice. That this is how I want this story to end. So I have always, liked this particular quality about short stories. So when I thought of writing short stories, I feel it's more challenging than writing a novel. Why? Because when you are writing a novel, you have a lot of space and you have the liberty of using as many words as you can. But when it comes to a short story, the writer is not does not have the luxury of using many words because the writer has to begin right from the right in action, and the story has to end really well, keeping the pace and everything uh, equal. Also, one thing, Mariam Bin, I've seen is that the youth of today, especially when it comes to reading, they are very, what to say, choosy. They would not go for a 400 pager or a 500 pager like we used to do. So these children, they prefer reading stuff which ends real quick, and they prefer reading stuff which gives them that, okay, this. So I believe short story does that for you. It begins right in action, it teaches you a lesson, and it ends really quick. So using this particular genre, we are able to teach much more than we can writing a novel. I do not, I'm not saying anything against a novel because I'm a novel fan as well. But just as you asked that why did you choose this particular genre?
Yes, I agree with you that short stories are a very tough genre to justify because you need to, like you said very rightly, justify the entire story in a very short period of time. And again, I agree with you that today's generation wants instant gratification in
Exactly.
everything.
Exactly.
So, in an era of social media and videos and Netflix and God knows so many other electronic mediums, how important do you think literature is in the life of the youth?
I I feel Mariam Bain literature is the very pillar of the world in which we live. For example, if our ancestors, or let's say if people who came before us, they had not recorded their information or their lives or whatever they had learned from their life, we would never have been able to make things that we are so proud of today. For example, these electronic gadgets and mediums and all of this. If, for example, every theory that we see in science today was being passed on to somebody because human is mortal. So one has to die after 70 years, 80 years. So what can I do? I can preserve the information in the form of literature and pass it on to people. So I believe the world can be preserved, each and everything, whether it's optimism, whether it's narcissism, whether it is hope, whether it is despair, each and everything can be preserved the way it is with its true essence in the form of literature. Being connected to literature takes you to a completely different world, Jane, and I mean, there's no telling you this because you yourself are an amazing writer, an amazing reader, an avid reader. The life that we are leading today, these days, full of chaos and tension and panics and deadlines and this and that, literature takes you to a completely different world where none of this exists. It is your exodus. You can spend as much time as you want over there. For example, when I was in school, I always had this complex, which every girl faces in her teens of, not being really fair and not being really, the right body, not having the right body, not having the right height and stature. So in those days, when I used to go to library, I would pick up, any novel and I would pretend that I am the heroine of that novel, and that was enough for me because in my own world, I was a heroine. I was somebody who was making changes. And when I grew up with the same mindset that if I am unable to do anything in life, or if I am bounded by chains and obligations and deadlines and all of that, I always choose a piece of literature which can actually help me feel that I have done this, because I feel better when I have that feeling of achievement, that sense of achievement. Other than the fact, if we talk about material perspectives, students who are well read during schools, they always get a good exposure when they go to university, when they go to professional lives. Their communication skills are distinguished. You can easily identify a reader from a non-reader. You can easily identify a writer from a non-writer, and that is what takes you to the pinnacle of success, because life is much more than salary and incentives and perks. As a person, if you are able to influence at least, even if one or two individuals in your workplace, I call you successful that way. So I believe literature helps you to become a better version of yourself. It helps you explore all those areas which you cannot, or maybe you will not, in your life. So I feel literature is my dream world. It's a dream world for everybody who welcomes it and embraces it.
Absolutely. Um, Coming to the preface of your book, you talk about embracing your weirdness. In the interview, also, you use the word weird to describe yourself. Now, at a time when the youth is looking to fit in, to follow bandwagon, to do what the latest trend is, uh, why do you talk about endorsing or embracing your weirdness or your uniqueness? How important is that?
Bain, I only say one thing whenever such a question is asked. I only say one thing, that there are many people who follow the bandwagon. There are many people who run the current trend, but your weirdness is your uniqueness, and that's what highlights you from the crowd. When I was in school, I was not a very confident child, and as I told you, there were many reasons to it. But at that time, if I had only known that to embrace your weirdness, to embrace yourself the way you are, I feel I had been much, much, more happier, and today I might have been more successful. But again, I did it at the right time. And the kind of confidence I feel when I am myself, when I embrace my weirdness, when I openly say that, okay, fine, I'm looking at you because I want to know what's going on. Okay, fine, I did this because that was my intention. I feel that liberates me, that makes me free. I don't worry about things then. And I think that is what makes me a happier and a more satisfied person, because other than the fact that humans are all weird, we just don't show it. If we look at examples such as Einstein and Newton, all these big men who have who have left an indelible mark on the corridors of science and history, all these people were weird, and they embraced their weirdness. If we just look at the Einstein, the hairstyle of Einstein, we would, I mean, who in our youngsters would go out having those hair? But Einstein loved the way he was, and he was so resilient when it came to producing what was inside him, that he would lock himself into a room for days and days, and the family was strictly told not to knock the door, because that's it. He's weird. The world might call him weird, but today we quote his examples and we use his theories to create every new invention that the world has to see. So I feel that is why I will always remain this weird individual, because this is what makes Zainab Zainab. Otherwise, if I follow the crowd, I mean, where do I stand in that?
Absolutely. And I think this is what we need to teach our generations. As facilitators, we know that multiple intelligences
Hmm.
exist. No two people are alike. So if you find out that skill that you have, that makes you stand out, that gives you
Exactly.
worth, that gives you esteem, that I think is the whole point of education.
Very right. Very
And
right.
I know that I want to ask you a lot of questions, but I must control myself. In the end, I just want to ask you, what would you advise aspiring writers?
Uh, First of all, I would ask aspiring writers, anybody who wishes to write, I would ask them to read. I read this quote, by Socrates somewhere. read, read, and read until you are full on the inside, and then pick up the pen to write. So, in case of reading, it not only equips you with the right vocabulary, with the right sentence structure, grammar, and all of that, but it also teaches you how to portray a particular situation in a particular way. For example, when we are reading a book, there are two ways. I think you can relate to this way. But there are two ways we read a book. There is the writer way and there is a reader way. So when you read the reader way, you are actually reading it the way the writer has written it. But when you read the writer way, then you are being a critique and like this could have been much better, this way, that way. So I feel reading is the number one thing that everybody should do, whether you want to become a writer or whether you want to become a successful doctor, surgeon, whatsoever, you need to read in the world. Other than that, there are many tools which can help you become a better person. Personally, when you suggested only the use of thesaurus, and I have been using it for a really long time, up till now only, when I sit down to write and when I'm done with writing, I self-edit the piece, and then when I sit down again to read it in the reader's shoes, then I use the thesaurus to change those words so that I can use words which actually teach the reader something also, and the reader is able to understand the written piece without using the dictionary or thesaurus, which actually our children do, even when they are told not to do it.
Thank you so much, Zainab, for allowing me this opportunity to interview you on your platform, which is Skiller. I remember just 6 months ago, you were interviewing me on, my book launch, and this makes me even happier to be able to interview you and to be able to reveal to the world the exceptional personality that you are. And the children of the community are very, very blessed to have a teacher, a mentor, a consultant like you.
Thank you so much, Mariam Bain. I thoroughly enjoyed the interview. It's always, a learning experience sitting with you only. And when you ask me questions, I feel I learn, I have never looked at the book, with this angle. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Bain, and all this that you're going through. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is all mine.